I'm Jeanne Schumacher, founder of the Plant-Based Academy, where you can get the education, guidance, and support you need to be successful in a plant-based lifestyle. I'm here with Dr. Neal Barnard, president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, founder of the Barnard Medical Center, and he has an amazing new book out called The Power Foods Diet. In this book, he covers a breakthrough plan that traps, tames, and burns calories for easy and permanent weight loss. And I can't wait to dive into this. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnard, for taking the time to be with me here today.
Well, thank you, Jeanne. It's terrific to be with you.
Well, let's start with the study you completed in the American Journal of Medicine. You completed research with women who needed to lose weight, like every woman on this planet, okay? They've tried great many diets without success, the low calorie, the low carbs, you name it, they've tried it. I even heard about the tapeworm diet, okay? I never did that one. I thought it was great at the time, as, younger. But I thought, well, hey, that's good. The tapeworm eats everything for me and I don't have to worry about losing weight. Doesn't work. But anyway, never did it. So, but that's good. In this study, instead of focusing on how much, you focused on what they ate. So talk to us about your results.
Yes, that study was published in 2005 in the American Journal of Medicine, and we brought in 64 women. They were all after the age of menopause. They had done just as you were saying, they'd done every diet known to humanity and really felt stuck. The diet effects weren't permanent, or sometimes they were worse off than before. And so what we tried to do was something quite different. We wanted to see if by changing the types of foods, say not focusing on the quantity, so you're never hungry, what that would do. And to make a long story short, well, we compared a comparison diet. The sort of the best current diet was the National Cholesterol Education Program's diet: chicken, fish, not so much red meat, not so much fat. And that was used for comparison. And the diet that we wanted to test set the animal products aside, and it kept oils pretty low. But it didn't include any kind of calorie limit, and it didn't say you had to avoid carbs or anything like that. Just, animal products weren't a big thing, and the oils were really low. And what we discovered was two things. The first was that people lost weight significantly and permanently for as long as the study went on. It went on for more than 2 years. They never put the weight back on without cutting calories. The second thing we discovered is their metabolism went up. In other words, it was sort of repairing the tricks that nature seems to do on it to us, where our metabolism is slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. The opposite occurred with these women. Their metabolism was speeding up in the after-meal period. So, very cool
How do,
thing.
how, do- how do you measure that?
Okay, what you do, you come into our laboratory, and I'll sit you in a chair, and I put a mask over your face, over your nose and your mouth. You're going to feel like an astronaut. And what I'm doing is I'm measuring your oxygen intake and your carbon dioxide output with some pretty simple arithmetic that tells me how many calories you're burning minute by minute by minute. And then what I'll do, that's good to know. It's 6:30 in the morning. You just came in, you haven't eaten anything. Your metabolism is the lowest it's going to be all day. We'll measure it at baseline. Then I'll give you a meal, and I'll see how you respond to the meal. And different meals cause different kinds of calorie burns. And then so we'll be able to see how you respond. The bad news is that your suspicions are probably right. Your metabolism may have slowed. The good news is you can change that, and you can change it fast. It depends on what you eat and what you have been eating. Those sleeping mitochondria in your cells that are not burning calories anymore because they're not getting the nutrients and they're bathing in bad stuff in your cells, we can fix that so that your metabolism can improve. Yep.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. Well, you also discussed this appetite taming effect. This sounds like too good to be true, seriously. So explain what this is and what factors impact how this works. Because there's these foods that make you feel full and satisfied with less calories, and you discussed that this comes from a combination of factors. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, it does. There are a couple things, and let me mention one thing that people haven't really understood very well. Your digestive tract has to have some say in whether you continue eating. So let's say you're eating a meal, your digestive tract releases a compound called GLP-1. with GLP-1 goes to the brain and turns down your appetite. Your intestinal tract is effectively saying to your brain, I've got all the food I can manage. I'm busily digesting it. Turn down the appetite so that you're not eating more because I can't handle it right now. And so the GLP-1 goes to the brain, turns down your appetite. That's great. Now, Novo Nordisk sells a synthetic GLP-1 to turn down your appetite. It's called Wegovy, or it's also marketed as Ozempic. And this is the drug that people are paying $15,000 a year for. But your body makes it naturally. And my research colleague, Hanna Kaliova, our director of clinical research here at the Physicians Committee, did an amazing study. She brought in individuals, gave them a fast food burger, measured their GLP-1. And what happened was basically nothing. It just doesn't increase. And well, why not? It turns out that your gut, in order to release the GLP-1, is looking for certain things. It's looking for fiber. It's looking for healthy, complex carbohydrate, and a burger doesn't have that. So she then did the study again with foods that had healthy, complex carbohydrate and had fiber, a plant-based sandwich. Bingo! The GLP-1 it spiked like a medication. And that gave us the answer. A burger will fill you up. But when it fills you up, it's because you've eaten so much, your stomach stretch kicks in, and you're stopping eating because of pain. Well, you should have an appetite control that works way before the pain kicks in. And so it depends on high fiber foods, high complex carbohydrate foods, and you can use that. The second thing, just really, really quickly, is that let's say you're eating a lot of fatty food. You're going to eat Chinook salmon, which is 52% fat. I mean, that'll fill you up eventually. But by the time it fills you up, you have consumed a huge amount of calories because every fat gram has 9 calories in it. And so what we want to be doing is filling up with foods that are modest in calories, fiber, healthy complex carbohydrates. And that opens the door to a huge array of foods made from vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains that fill you up in a natural way. You're going to think you're eating a huge amount. Calorie-wise, not so much.
Oh, wow. Well, is there certain compounds that we find in these foods?
The main thing that really matters the most, or that we have found, is overall speaking, I'm thinking of high fiber content, high complex carbohydrates. However, when we tease foods apart, we have discovered that there do seem to be certain foods that work better than others. And there are some foods that have mixed effects. Take berries, for example. Berries are rich in pigments called anthocyanins that seem to be metabolism boosters, hot peppers as well, but they may also affect appetite as well. So we're seeing combined effects.
That is so awesome. I mean, especially when you start to think about the fats, because like they're by far the densest source of calories. And when we skip them, we tend to lose weight. I mean, duh, you know. But share the results from the Tufts University researchers. And in this study, the researchers prepared everyone's foods for a 6-week period. They focused especially on wheat, oats, rice, fiber. They had 2 groups. One was given grains with the fiber intact, and the other had the fiber removed. In other words, refined grains. What did you learn from this study?
I got to tell you, this is Tufts University is a great university, and they did a study that my research team is never going to do because, just as you said, they brought in 90 people for 6 weeks. Half of them got basically white bread, and the other half got the whole grain breads, the brown rice, and the high fiber foods. And then they took stool samples from everyone. And what they were looking for was when you eat high fiber foods, the fiber breaks up in your digestive tract to release 1 million tiny sponges, basically. That's what fiber is like. It grabs unabsorbed calories, grabs a hold of them, and won't let them go. And it carries those unabsorbed calories down your digestive tract. Out they go with the waste. You haven't absorbed them. And so what the Tufts University researchers did is in the stool samples, they were looking for unabsorbed calories. Yes, I'm not making this up, they did. And they found about 100 calories per day are lost by this, which is it's not enormous, but you're adding that to about 200 calories a day in the appetite taming effect, and another 200, give or take, in the metabolism boosting effect. You put it all together, and it's huge.
Well, I think you mentioned they lost like 5 pounds a year, just from this.
Yeah, yeah, and so people don't really think, well, what's the difference if it's white bread or whole grain bread? What's the difference if it's a little bit of chicken breast versus a bean, which the bean will have fiber the chicken breast doesn't. The difference over time is huge. And the beauty of it is that when you lose weight just by calorie trapping, you don't have to lace up your sneakers. You don't have to be hungry. You don't need a food scale. The foods just do the work for you.
That's just so awesome. I honestly, seriously, that it makes me happy because like having gone through my whole life, yo-yoing, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, and I never could keep it off. So it just makes me happy to hear about these studies and see what's going on. So
It's so important because with the old-fashioned approach to dieting, it really took up a kind of a mistaken view. The whole idea was, well, you're just eating too many calories, so just voluntarily eat less. But that causes your natural homeostatic mechanisms to rebel because we normally would eat to satiety. So if instead we're using the foods that trigger your satiety mechanisms naturally, then you don't have to get into that whole big struggle. And when you don't have to get into that struggle, you don't have to get into all the emotional reactions that we have to because people fail diets. Virtually everybody fails one or more diets. When that happens, it's not just a physical issue. It's also sort of an emotional assault. If I can't do the diets that other people do, what's wrong with me? And my goal and really the message of the Power Foods diet is it's not you. It's the foods. Let's focus there, and we're going to use the foods that do the work for you as they should.
well, there's a great book by Michael Moss, Fat, Sugar, and Salt. And he talks about this, that how the food industries have been upping the amounts. Very much like the tobacco, they took the right out of the playlist of the tobacco industry and really just started upping the amounts of those to increase in our foods. And it's crazy. And when you actually learn to read what a nutrition label is telling you, you're blown away by how much actual fat there is in like a lot of the processed foods, which is why it tastes so good. I'm not gonna lie, it does taste good.
Yes, yes, but we're also habituating ourselves to it
Yes.
because your taste buds have a natural fat set point, and you want to reach that same set point. So if you lived in Japan and it's 1959, the diet is based on huge amounts of rice, some vegetables, some fish, but not really enormous amount. It's mostly a rice-based diet.
Mhm.
At that point, the diet was so low in fat, that's what the tastes of people there preferred. When the fast food chains came in, at first, the Japanese population did not want this. It didn't taste right. It was greasy, and their taste buds had a set point for fat that was not in sync with what American exports were pushing on them. Over time, you could change that set point with a lot of marketing, and people came to develop a taste for greasy stuff, fried things, meaty diets, ice cream, things that were not traditional Japanese foods. And you can then change the set point back. So if you've gained weight because of a high fat set point, you just change the set point back to a lower fat level and you come to prefer that.
Wow. And it's true. I mean, and your taste buds do change without question. And how you appreciate the foods. Because I know, like, I had gone to an event of recent, and they made it vegan, for the vegan person, but they cooked it with a lot of oil, and then there was a lot of salt involved in there, and it just messed me up for days afterwards. I mean, just I didn't feel good.
You see this all the time. We did a randomized trial comparing a vegan diet to a Mediterranean diet. And a Mediterranean diet has olive oil in it and chicken and fish. And that's sort of part of its allure because it sounds very indulgent. And the Mediterranean diet doesn't really cause weight loss very well because it's oily and high in fat calories. But when we had people do the vegan diet first, they lost weight really well, and they really lost their taste for fat. After 16 weeks, when we switched them to the Mediterranean diet to try that, they didn't want it because they didn't like the oily taste. They didn't like the meaty stuff. They didn't like the idea of cheese. And if you had asked these same people couple months earlier, wouldn't you like those foods? They would have said, sure, but you can reset your taste for fatty foods. You can reset your taste to not want them anymore.
It's true. It's true. Well, researchers at Pennington Biomedical Research Center in Louisiana invited 10 young men to join a research study and measured the activities of their genes that controlled the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, as we talked about. Then these researchers added fatty food to the volunteers' diet. Normally, fats make up about 30% of our calories in the American diet, probably more for some of us, as we can see from our blossoming bodies. And for this experiment, though, the researchers increased that to 50%. And what were the results?
What we are looking for, what they looked for in this study, was what we call mitochondrial biogenesis, which is biogenesis. It's just a big word, meaning, does your body make and support mitochondria? People might remember from their high school biology that mitochondria are in your cells. Those are your calorie burners. And when they are working, you've got a high metabolism and you're just burning up the calories. And what they discovered is that you can effectively disable your mitochondria with a high fat diet. What I mean is cheese pizza. The fat from the cheese gets into your bloodstream, goes into your cells, and the mitochondria just stop working. They can't work in an oil slick. And so we can measure it, and we measure it in many ways. And what we find is that your metabolism just slows right down. That's what the people at Pennington found. The reverse is also true, that if your cells have accumulated a lot of fat, we get the fat out of your diet, the fat dissipates from your cells, your metabolism rises, it goes back up. And earlier we were talking about our 2005 study. What we discovered was after 14 weeks, when we measured everybody's metabolism again, even using the very same test meal, but having avoided the fatty foods during the interim, their metabolism, their metabolic response was dramatically higher. They were able to burn calories faster simply because you're letting the mitochondria do their work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's another question. Is what about like fats like avocado? Does that have the same impact as like the fat, like animal fats?
More or less, yes. Now, the plant oils overall are better than the animal fats, typically. Animal fats are not just fatty, but they're very high in saturated fat, the fat that's solid at room temperature. The vegetable oils may be marginally better, and they're a lot better from the standpoint of cholesterol. But we do see similar effects even from avocado fat, even from the fat that's in nuts and peanut butter. And so this doesn't mean that those foods are necessarily terrible. But if you think about it in nature, a nut, it's in a tree. It's seasonal. So it's not there all the time. And it's in a shell. So you can't, there's a limit to how much you could actually get until factories were invented to deshell them and add smokehouse flavor and distribute them to every 7-Eleven that there is. And now we can really overdo it on foods that Mother Nature wasn't really supplying in so much abundance.
We used to have that 5-pound bag of nuts at Christmas, and that would sit on the coffee table, and you have the nutcracker and whatever. And then, and it would take us like 2 or 3 months to like eat that. You'd sit down and crack 1 or 2 nuts, and then at the bottom there was always the Brazil nuts because you needed a chainsaw to get through those.
See, those were decorations, and nowadays it can be a food group because they're shelled, they're salted, and so forth. And so that's where it becomes a problem because an occasional nut here or there, who cares? But if it's a big thing, they're pretty fatty, and that fat is going to slow down your mitochondria as well.
Why do we store so much fat? I mean, has our body changed? Is it to blame?
Storing fat is a darn good thing. In reality, for most of our time on Earth, I mean, there was such a thing as food scarcity or famines. It would come and go. Foods were in season, foods are out of season. And if your body could not store fat, you're not going to survive. Nowadays, we have, food scarcity between trips to the convenience store. I mean, our ability to store fat now is harming us. But it was a good idea that nature had. It's the reason that we managed to survive.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, because if you think about it, there's not many things that you would find, like say 5,000 years ago, that would have been high in fat in the diet, and it would have been very seasonal. Like I knew every nut tree in our neighborhood, and we would go out with a paper bag and we would collect those, and we'd sit in the driveway and crack those nuts for about 3 hours to get a little handful of nuts. And now
Yes, you're absolutely right. We forget that humans are in the biological family of great apes. We'd like to pretend that we're dogs or cats, but we are not carnivores. We are great apes. Great apes, like chimpanzees or gorillas, they eat phenomenal amounts of plants. Fatty foods are rare in their environment. And once we had stone tools and had the capacity to make arrowheads and hatchets, we could become carnivores or pretend to be. And once we had more modern food production techniques, we could eat all kinds of fatty stuff, but that was really not in our nature.
right. Oh, it's so true. Well, scientists at Virginia Tech found that some foods might actually be harming our calorie burning ability, which I think you mentioned a little bit. But in our intestinal tract, there's millions of bacteria, some good bacteria, some bad, which can produce toxic compounds. What did the researchers find here?
Yeah, this is an amazing thing, and it sort of complements what they found at Pennington. There, they found that just eating fat, the fat would get into your cells and sort of disrupt your mitochondrial function. They discovered that just within your digestive tract, there are bacteria that are creating something called endotoxin. It's a poison, so to speak. It's mild, but it's there, and it stays in your digestive tract because of the gut microbiome, which makes it. When you eat fatty foods, the gut gets leaky. And that means that the endotoxin gets into your bloodstream. And when the endotoxin made by bacteria gets into your bloodstream, it goes to the cells and it disrupts the cell's ability to metabolize nutrients. And suddenly your cells are being slowed down, not because, in this case, not because the fat is disrupting the mitochondria, but because the bacterial endotoxins have leaked through into your bloodstream, into your cells, and they are disrupting it. And that is because of the fat in the foods you eat. So in both situations, in both studies, it was the fat that was the problem, but for different reasons.
Wait, Doc. So you're saying that eating these fatty foods was shutting down the body's ability to burn calories? I mean, like, wait, some people lose weight by avoiding carbs and eating fatty foods like butter. Oh my God, I was at one of those coffee places and they're putting oil in the coffee, oil in the coffee. Oh my God, how does this work?
Okay, well, oil in the coffee does not make it a slimming food. But the way a low carbohydrate diet will cause weight loss is simply because carbohydrates, fruits, grains, root vegetables like potatoes, beans, all these things, that's 50 or 60% of what you eat, of what a person would normally eat. And let's say I tell you, let's go low carb. Well, you're taking all of that food out. And so if you take all that out, you're going to lose weight simply because your calories are dropping. And so the weight loss is as a result of that. Now, it's the worst way to do it because what are you left with? You're left with meat, gravy, and the foods that, number one, will raise cholesterol, they'll raise cancer risk. And if people make up for the foods they took out with higher portions of these fatty foods, they're not losing weight at all. And that's what a lot of people have experienced as well.
Well, you can't sustain that either. I mean, and as soon as you stop, you're just going to gain it all back. I mean, and then some.
Well, I hope you don't sustain it because it's the wrong kinds of foods for overall health, and there's no reason to sustain that kind of thing. When we look at population groups, who is the thinnest? If you compare an omnivore to, say, a semi-vegetarian, to a pesco-vegetarian, to a person who doesn't eat meat at all, the more you get the animal products out of your diet, the slimmer the populations are on average, and the slimmest of all are the people who actually eat foods that are pretty high in carbohydrates. But those carbohydrates are in the form of whole grains, starchy vegetables, and beans. The people following plant-based diets in the Adventist Health Study too, they were on average about 35 pounds skinnier than the average meat eater. So it's big stuff.
Well, this was interesting that in a 2017 study, researchers in the United Kingdom examined over 1,000 pairs of female twins. And they found that within each pair, the twin who ate more of a certain foods tended to have less body fat, especially abdominal fat, than her sister. Obviously, they're genetically the same. So, what is the big difference here?
This was a heroic study. I mean, how you find 2,734 identical twins in the first place, that was good. Everyone got a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan allows you to actually track your body composition. And they did find, just as you said, within each pair, there was one thing that predicted who was going to be significantly skinnier, who had less body fat, and who had specifically less abdominal fat. And that one thing was anthocyanins. Anthocyanins that's what makes a blueberry blue. And there's a red anthocyanin that makes a strawberry red. And in fact, there's a whole painting box of anthocyanins in October when the leaves turn. Those colors are anthocyanins in the leaves. Don't eat that, but but you can eat the blueberries and the strawberries, and all their cousins. The anthocyanins appear to be metabolism boosters. So there have been a number of studies on them. It does seem to work. So the more people increase their anthocyanin intake. Okay, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Let's say you eat a pear. That red blush that on the pear, that's anthocyanins. Let's say you eat a grape, that's anthocyanins. That's what's associated with the weight loss.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
That is huge. That is huge. Well,
Well, you can put this to work in a fun way. When I wrote the Power Foods Diet, I worked with Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon, who are just wonderful recipe developers. So Dustin said, okay, you want blueberries? I got blueberries. And he made a cinnamon blueberry syrup. And the reason he had put cinnamon in there is that cinnamon is a metabolism booster as well. You put this on some French toast and kind of unglop the French toast. The way my mother used to do it, it was soaking in butter. Don't, you know what I'm talking about. Don't do that. But Lindsay Nixon made a great French toast. It's a cinnamon French toast, and you put Dustin syrup on top. And that was, to tell you the truth, Jeanne, that was kind of the point of the Power Foods Diet, was to help people see there are foods that love you back. Let's see how they work. But now the most important thing is to eat them. So we made 120 recipes, and Dustin took pictures of them that are about an inch away from food porn, I have to say. They're just so beautiful. I'm hoping that we can end dieting. We're not going to be counting calories anymore. We're not going to be avoiding carbohydrate anymore. What we're going to do instead is eat the foods that have nearly medicinal properties, except that they're just natural foods that make this not an issue anymore.
when I heard about the cinnamon, oh, because I adore cinnamon. I love that. And I was really excited to hear about this study. So in 2017, 116 overweight volunteers similar in age and activity were randomly given capsules containing about a teaspoon of raw powdered cinnamon and given a placebo capsule with none had the spice. It didn't have the spice. So they were basically your control groups.
Right.
What were the amazing results of this study?
Yeah, the amount they gave them was about a teaspoon. So it's much more than a person would normally eat, because frankly, people don't use it very much at all, although everyone loves it. But it's by no means beyond the range of what a person could include if they wanted to sprinkle some on their oatmeal and whatever. But what they discovered over 16 weeks, the average person lost a little bit more than 7.5 pounds. And Jeanne, when I look at studies like this, I'm a skeptic. And so you want to make sure that this is not a nonsensical study. And so what I always look for in a study is, number one, was it done on human beings? Because if they fed something to mice and wanted to claim a health effect, you've really got to look skeptically at it. Number two, was it funded by an industry that sells that product? You've got to be careful about that. But maybe the most important thing is we look for consistency. And researchers have looked, there have been a little bit more than a half a dozen studies like this. And in virtually every one of them, you see the same effect. And then the final thing that you look for is a mechanism. And the cinnamon is an amazing thing. It has an aldehyde in it. And researchers are not necessarily the most creative people. They didn't know what to call it. Researchers wear bow ties. What can I say? They're kind of conservative people. They named it cinnamaldehyde. And yeah, that was the best they could do. But the cinnamaldehyde it comes from cinnamon. It goes down your digestive tract. There's a receptor waiting for it all these years for you to eat some cinnamon. And it then triggers adrenaline release in your digestive tract. So it works, but you can put cinnamon in everything. I mean, you can put it in all kinds of desserts. You can put it in tea. You can put it on your toast. And it doesn't have to be only cinnamon, because you can do the same with other spices too.
No, yeah. But instead of putting that in a pill like they did in the study, you just put it in your
Yeah.
mouth. I mean, and you mentioned that there was a difference between the cinnamons, like Ceylon cinnamon or just regular cinnamon.
Buy Salon Cinnamon. And when you go in the store, don't just pick up the first cinnamon bottle you see. Read it. It'll be Saigon cinnamon. It could be Indonesian cinnamon. It could be Chinese cinnamon. Those are not the ones you want. They have a lot of bang. They taste good. But the one you want is Ceylon cinnamon, Ceylon, Ceylon, like Sri Lanka. That's the one you want. Do buy it organic. I think that with spices, that matters a lot. But don't worry about it because cinnamon, it lasts basically forever. It becomes almost free. It doesn't cost much of anything. But get Ceylon cinnamon when you get it home. Seal it up so that it's not exposed to air. That'll cause it to oxidize. If it's sealed up, if it's in a cool place in the dark in your cupboard, it'll last a year.
Awesome. I've been starting to add it to my smoothies. I'm adding it
Yeah.
everywhere. It's just because it's a delicious flavor anyway. I mean, honestly, I do
Yeah.
adore that. I do adore that, especially
And it combines with things really, really well. It combines
yeah.
with things. So the cinnamon on the French toast that I mentioned, it combines really well with the blueberries and the syrup. And by the way, let me give a tip about blueberries. I've been, pitching the blueberry, but don't just go to the store and buy the first pack of blueberries you see. Take 5 minutes, look at it, make sure they're not withered, make sure that they haven't molded because,
Yeah.
their shelf life is not really that long. Look at them, make sure they're plump and blue. Buy organic. Organic matters less with a banana because you're going to throw away the peel and whatever pesticides were on it. It matters a lot with blueberries. You're not peeling them. Don't wash them. Buy them, put them in the fridge, do not wash them. And the reason is if you wash them, the bits of moisture that sits on them causes mold to grow, for the 3 days until you use them. So wash them only when you are going to use them. So just leave them sit there. When you're ready to use them, then wash them thoroughly. Frozen is great. Frozen is as good as fresh. And my biggest tip about blueberries is don't do what everybody has done, which is make them into a muffin to which you add a huge glob of butter. So don't mess them up with the bad addition. You know what I mean? Don't add the bad additions. Let nature seduce you with the beautiful taste of the blueberry.
Oh, and they are so good. Oh my
Yeah.
God, blueberry muffins. Oh, please. And I can't wait to try that blueberry cinnamon. I mean, I've been looking through the recipes in the book and I'm like, whoa, okay, new things to try. Love
Oh
it.
yeah, but the muffins are great too. These are wild blueberry muffins in the book. That's Lindsay's recipe, and they're just killer too. They're really great. So for all the people who thought I can't have carbs again, you bring them back. We found this in so many studies, going back to the 2005 study we were talking about. We brought in people, they lost weight really well. They were losing a pound a week, week after week after week. We followed them for 2 years. They never regained the lost weight. What were they doing with carbs? They weren't worrying about it. They were eating more carbs than before. Now they're healthy carbs, but you don't have to worry about those things. So if you want a muffin, I got a muffin for you.
Yeah, and I can't wait to try it. Oh, well, in our next video, we're going to explore the specific foods that combine these three effects: taming your appetite, trapping calories, and boosting your metabolism at the same time. Ha, wow. Learning to choose these right foods, weight loss will essentially be automatic. So thank you so much, Dr. Barnard, for your time, your amazing research, insights, and incredible knowledge. And I look forward to connecting with you to learn more about the foods that power your weight loss.
You bet. Thank you, Jeanne.